Being innovative means having the ability to reject popular thinking and trying something new. So how do I go about doing that? Stay tuned. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And we are in a series talking about how successful people think. And one of the things, and it's a book by John C. Maxwell, and we're using a lot of his material to click in here. I've gone over some of this stuff in some of my other videos, but always take a different perspective, a different angle, a different paradigm if you want to get your point across, because what one person sees and understands is not the same as what another person does, so you want to come at it from a different angle. So how do you question the acceptance of popular thinking? Popular thinking is often proved to be wrong and limiting. Questioning it isn't really that hard once you cultivate the habit of doing it. The difficulty is in getting started, just like anything else, getting to the starting line. Let me give you some ways, because we are a how-to channel, okay? We went over the what, why it's important to be able to be innovative and get away from popular thinking. But how do you do that? Let's go over the how-to. First of all, always think before you follow. Many individuals follow others almost automatically. Sometimes they do so because they desire to take the path of least resistance. Other times it's because they fear rejection, or they believe there's wisdom in doing what everybody else does. But if you want to succeed, you need to think about what's best, not what's popular. Challenging popular thinking requires a willingness to be unpopular and go outside of the norm. You know, following the tragedy of September 11, 2001, very few people really were excited about getting on an airplane. But I'll bet a lot of you didn't know that that wasn't the first time that terrorism had affected the way people travel. Back in the 80s, when I was still a puppy, I worked with a company called Copa, and what they would do is they would have a trip as an incentive. You know, you do this amount of production, you get to go on this trip, and these were fabulous trips to Hong Kong, to Hawaii, to the Bahamas, to Canada. I mean, all these great different trips. And so we go on a trip, and then when we come back from the trip, the people that would produce it say, okay, where's the next trip? Where's the next trip? All right, well, when I was working with that company in the 80s, there was an act of terrorism that had the whole world shaking in its boots. And as a result, very few people were traveling. Airline tickets the price went down. You know, people didn't want to really get on an airplane. So the people that were the head of this company, Copa, said, you know, maybe we'd like to go to Colorado, to one of those, to Denver or one of the places in Colorado, the mountains. And the travel agent said, you know, for less money than you'd spend to go to Colorado, you can take everybody to Europe. You can go to London, you can take a cruise, and it would be less money than going to Colorado. That's what the company did. They went against what was popular. As a result, one of the best trips I ever had was a cruise down the Rhine River, 3 days in London. It was absolutely fabulous. So by going against the grain of popular thinking, remind yourself that it's largely underrated, unrecognized, and misunderstood. Unpopular thinking contains the seeds of vision and opportunity. Unpopular thinking is required for all progress. The next time you feel ready to conform to popular thinking on an issue, stop and think. You may not want to create change for its own sake, but you certainly don't want to blindly follow just because you haven't thought about what's best. Second, appreciate thinking different from your own. This is especially true in leadership. Okay, one of the ways to embrace innovation and change is to learn to appreciate how other people think. To do that, you got to continually expose yourself to people that are different from yourself. As you strive to challenge popular thinking, spend time with people with different backgrounds, education levels, professional experience, personal interests, and so on. You'll think like the people with whom you spend the most time. If you spend time with people who think out of the box, you're more likely to challenge popular thinking and to break new ground yourself. Third, continually question your own thinking. Let's face it, anytime we find a way of thinking that works, one of our greatest temptations is to go back to it repeatedly, even if it's not working as well as it once did. The greatest enemy to tomorrow's success sometimes is today's success. And boy, have I got a great example for you on that. You know, I've mentioned the name Bob Anderson, my #1 mentor on this channel over and over and over again. The man taught me so much, somebody that I admire greatly. But he developed a system with a company that I worked with when I was in the insurance business, where we go and we knock on doors. We had a door approach, we drilled, practiced, rehearsed, getting into the house, doing the presentation, and on and on and on and on, closing, all of the different aspects. And then all of a sudden, in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, it didn't start to work so well anymore. And it happened for me. My office, I was in Indianapolis at the time, was actually the very first office where it started not to work. Very conservative area, the Midwest, very conservative area. And at that time, there was a lot of activity about people going postal. And, that's where some people went to the post office and that were working there, that were dissatisfied, and it became kind of well known. And people were reluctant to open their doors. They were fearing for their safety. And it started in the Midwest, and then it grew to the whole rest of the country. I mean, back in that time, knocking on somebody's door and getting into their house wasn't all that difficult. Today, people don't even answer their doors. In your organization, if you're involved in putting into a place what currently exists, then it's likely that you're going to resist change, as Bob Anderson did. I told him what was going on. I went out in the field myself, and he said, no. Sometimes you have to recognize that things are changing. That's why it's important to challenge your own thinking. If you're too attached to your own thinking and how everything is done now, then nothing is going to change for the better. Fourth, try things in new ways. As an example, when was the last time you did something for the very first time? Do you avoid taking risks or trying new things? One of the best ways to get out of the rut of your own thinking is to innovate. And you can do that in little everyday ways. Drive to work a different way than you normally do. Order something different at the restaurant. Don't always get the same thing. Ask somebody else at work that you don't normally work with to help you with a particular project. Take yourself off autopilot. One of the things that I preach from this pulpit time and time again is the importance of getting out of your comfort zone. And getting out of your comfort zone just means doing things that you don't normally do and getting used to it. Brushing your teeth with your left hand, as an example. All right? I mean, little things. Get in the habit. It's like lifting weights. The more you do, the stronger you become. Get used to being uncomfortable. When it comes right down to it, popular thinking is comfortable. It's like an old recliner adjusted to all the old owners' idiosyncrasies. The problem with most old recliners is that no one has really looked at them lately. If so, they'd agree that it's time to get a new one. If you want to reject popular thinking in order to embrace achievement, you'll have to get used to being uncomfortable. If you embrace unpopular thinking and make decisions based upon what works best and what is right rather than what is commonly accepted, understand and know this. In your early years, you won't be as wrong as people think you are. In your later years, you won't be as right as people think you are. And all through the years, you'll be better than you ever thought you could be. Bottom line, growth begins when you escape from your comfort zone, which means having the capability of rejecting popular ideas in favor of innovation. Once again, huge shout out, John C. Maxwell, How Successful People Think. Always remember this: don't ration your passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.